Welcome to the Reality Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Brian Scott. This podcast is dedicated to the spirits who believe life is meant to be magical and fun. It contains advanced viewpoints for multidimensional human beings of the 21st century. Here we venture to share mysteries of self and reality. Our primary purpose is to reawaken your sense of fascination and awe towards life, and to shatter your rigid belief systems and ways of seeing the world. Our goal is to hack reality, to unleash your potential and open unlimited possibilities of wealth, health, and relationships in your life. We are experiencing a quantum shift in the world, a new reality revolution, and here we will explore all aspects of it and how to write it and change your own life to achieve your dreams and move into perfect realities of your own choosing. Today's episode, we will talk about importance. One of the things about the reality transurfing book by Vadim Zeland is when it really touched me. It was a powerful book. I have another entire podcast dedicated to it, but I want to go into a little more depth about this, and we're going to talk about importance. Importance is mentioned 500 times in Vadim Zeland's book, Reality Transurfing. And balancing forces is mentioned 168 times. And the reason that this theory really spoke to me was it was the truth. I had seen it experientially hundreds of times in achieving manifestations that were not that important to me. But at the same time, having difficulty manifesting goals and aspirations when they were really important to me. And it was always the idea of letting go, of finding a balance, so that if you just want something too much, it's just not going to work out, right? There's always that sense of when you really, really badly want something, you can never have it. And that's the truth. I believe that the law of nature will tell us that if you really, really, really badly want something, you're probably not going to get it. Now, in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about desire being one of the keys to growing rich. And Frederick Dodson claims that desire is a real thing because in some parallel reality, you have that thing. And so there's a part of your spirit that's saying, I desire that thing because I've already experienced it. Remember, we've talked about in the past that time exists, all of time, future and past. And there is a part of you that is aware of all the timelines. For whatever action you take, what it will mean all the way to the very end. Now, the idea of balancing forces is very important. Everything in nature strives towards balance. Changes in air temperature are balanced by wind. Differences in temperature are compensated by thermal exchange. In ecological systems are usually in a stable equilibrium or homeostasis, which is to say a small change in some particular parameter, the size of a population, for example, will be corrected by negative feedback that will bring that parameter back into a point of balance with the rest of the system. This is something that we see in multiple systems and the ecosystem. We see it on a solar scale. We see balancing forces with gravity and planets and rings around planets. There's always a balancing force. There is some sort of force that creates this level of balance. That's why you have such perfect symmetry when you look at planets and celestial bodies. So it might even apply to populations that depend on each other, like predator or prey, or relations with herbivores and their food sources. It also sometimes is applied to the Earth's ecosystem, as I said, and the composition of the atmosphere and the world's weather. Aristotle was a big believer in the law of balance. He talks about the golden mean. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle explains the mean between the extremes, the middle way. And it's interesting because the concept of the golden mean was very popular with those old philosophers. They loved the idea of moderation, harmony, and balance in everything. Critics say that this theory of nature, some actually out there say, of permanent balance has been discredited by scientists working in ecology and finding chaos patterns. There's a great book to read I recommend by John Kreitcher, The Balance of Nature, Ecology's Enduring Myth. This particular book discusses how actually nature is not in balance and there's constant chaos. I believe that his argument is disproven, but they've tried to take the idea of balance and complicate that. So we get things like catastrophe theory and chaos theory. In mathematics, catastrophe theory is a branch of bifurcation theory in the study of dynamical systems. It is also a special case of more general and singularity theory in geometry. Bifurcation theory studies and classifies phenomena characterized by sudden shifts in balance arising from small behavior and small changes in circumstances, analyzing how the qualitative nature of equation solutions depend on the parameters that appear in the equation. This may lead to a sudden and dramatic changes. For example, unpredictable timing and magnitude of a landslide is what they looked at when they did studies of landslides. They could not predict how the landslide, and so they couldn't, insure certain homes because of the inability to predict that, which you think would be pretty easy based on the amount of snow, but they could not do that. It also studies and classifies sudden shifts in behavior, as I said before. So catastrophe theory originated in 1960, and they discussed special cases of long-run equilibrium stability, and they created mathematical functions that dwelled on this and went over this, such as Lyapunov function. So small changes in certain parameters of a non-linear system, which I'm arguing that time is not linear, can cause equilibria to appear or disappear, or to change from attaching repellent or vice versa, leading to large and sudden changes in the behavior of a system. So you can have crazy things happen from small changes that can lead to a force that's causing an imbalance. So, however, in examining larger parameter space, catastrophe theory reveals that bifurcation points tend to occur as part of a well-defined geometrical structure. And so they started to see order within catastrophe theory, within the equations that they used. So and then they analyzed something called germs of the catastrophe geometries and the degeneracy of critical points unfolding. And they analyze something called a Taylor series, which is a representational of a function of an infinite sum of terms. And so the Taylor series has also been calculated when talking about parallel realities, when you'll deal with that, calculated from the values function of derivatives from a single point. And the idea is a single point can spread out into multiple infinite realities, and each single point, each decision is leading to multiple definite infinite realities. And the idea of infinite is difficult to imagine, but easy to imagine. You limit your ideas of what infinity really is. Certainly we are interacting with this infinity, and because of its heft and force, our bodies and minds are aware of this infinity. So there is no accident to it. Now, they started to do something called chaos theory, which was another branch of mathematics, focusing on the behavior of dynamical systems that are highly sensitive to initial conditions. Chaos is an interdisciplinary theory stating that within apparent randomness of chaotic complex systems, there are underlying patterns, constant feedback loops, repetition, self-similarity, fractals. And the idea, you get these beautiful structures which look and appear to have order, with self-organization and reliance on programming of the initial point known as the sensitive dependence of initial conditions. So the result in large differences in later state. A butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil can cause a hurricane in Texas. And you always hear the butterfly effect. But conceal that down to the idea that a thought is creative, that a thought has energy, and your single thought can make huge differences, causing an imbalance of forces. And so, as awakened beings, awake within this film that we're in, my idea here is that we are in a film. We're walking inside of a movie, and there's multiple different movies that we can watch. There's an archive that we have access to at any point, and it's like our own particular choose your own adventure book, but we have that for the universe. And the ending, we can turn to the last page for every one, and we can see where it ends. We have this, and it's available. But the thing is, we have access to the whole book. If you're accessing Source and you're accessing these higher levels of consciousness, you can access this entire grouping and see these patterns. Your subconscious begins to move and control and understand these self-organizing fractal patterns of chaos around you. So the idea that there's deterministic chaos that can be controlled, it can be understood. It's very interesting. I could talk about chaos theory forever. I find it fascinating. Of course, the first time I heard of chaos theory was Jurassic Park, like a lot of other people, when I read Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, and they talk about chaos theory. So it's very, very interesting to me, and a meaningful predictional method with chaos. But chaos is a part of the system. But we know one thing for sure, and that's what Zeland's getting at, is that their excess potential of energy forms imbalance. Balanced forces emerge to correct the imbalance. And the idea is to apply this in your life. We are so accustomed to such statements on nature of things that we fail to ask ourselves why it must necessarily be so, or how exactly the law of balance works. Laws do not actually explain anything. They are just statements of fact. When somebody tells you a law, it's not a theory. It is the truth. It's the fact. And we have things like the law of attraction and the law of balance. The law of balance may be more important than the law of attraction. They are obviously interplaying at all times. Understanding these systems and the way that they balance forces, because we're taking in and pulling out quantum energy on a regular basis from multiple parts of our bodies. And so this energy flow, it becomes a part of the balance that we have, especially when we're talking about our thoughts. All laws of nature are secondary and derived from the law of balance. The law of balance is primary. And it is impossible to explain why equilibrium should exist in nature in the first place, or more specifically, where balanced forces originate and why indeed they exist at all. But more and more scientists, as once they try to say that there's chaos and no balance, they look and they figure out that there is balance even in chaos. And there's always balancing forces, even in complicated and complex systems. The fact that we have become accustomed to something, that doesn't mean it is the way things necessarily are. One can imagine what the world would be like if there was no law of balance. An atmospheric jelly or an aggressive furnace is what Zeland refers to it as. The world would be terrible and ugly. Such a world would hardly have a reason to support the existence of the law of balance. And we're left to wonder in admiration at the perfection of the world that we have now. Because we live in this perfect world of balance, and it really does sometimes give you gratitude and awe, because there is this balance. And this balance, I believe, is coming from information. Now, the reason the balance is important is that you can create excess potentials. When you crave something, when you try to manifest and project your mental thought energy into a project or something, you create excess potentials. Excess potentials are created by mental energy when too much importance is given to a particular object. For example, according to Zeland, there's two situations. In one situation, you are standing on the floor in your house. In the other, you are standing on the edge of the precipice. The idea is if you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you could jump off, there's greater potential. And the greater potential will cause the potential of grave significance from that particular action will cause careless movement could become a mistake, and it's irreparable. And the energetic level is to, no matter what the situation is, it's the equal significance in both cases. There's still the same amount of energy, but the created potential causes drastic changes. Balanced forces emerge to neutralize the excess potential. Okay, so there's two different balancing forces that you could either jump off the cliff or you could back up. But one of those two things tend to happen to reduce the excess potential. You can even feel their influence. On one hand, an inescapable force seems to pull you downwards. On the other, a force draws you away from the ledge. To eliminate excess potential, you fear the balanced forces are required either to drag you away from the edge or to cast you forward, downwards, and to be done with it. It is the impact of the balancing forces that you are experiencing. So, the idea is that when you create importance in your work, in your life, eternally or externally, then you can create massive excess potential. One way that Zeland describes that this is possible is a person can achieve a certain level in their job. There can be a tendency to place massive importance on their work. But unfortunately, the more disproportionately important it becomes, the more likely it is that problems will arise. People assume it is quite natural for there to be problems, but in reality, the number of problems a person experiences is reduced significantly when they lower their expectations or relax their attachment. So the idea is that excess potential is the problem that you're trying to avoid when you try to avoid importance. Zeland states the word potential 281 times and excess potential 237 times. So the concept of excess potential, importance, and balancing forces, what spoke to my heart in my own personal experience in trying to utilize the law of attraction and my own thought energies into creating realities. So excess potential is invisible. It's intangible. It plays a significant and even insidious role in our lives. When balanced forces eliminate excess potential, they can generate a myriad of problems. Paradoxically, the end result is often the exact opposite of the original intention, and people do not understand why this happens. It is this phenomenon that sometimes makes us feel as if some inexplicable dark force. People get what they do not want rather than what they do want. Here is another example of how what we desire slips away from us. We see that all the time with people around us and people in our lives when they get exactly the opposite of what they were hoping for. So when a person strives to prove their importance to the world also, the energy is wasted on supporting excess potential. Working on self-development, on the other hand, according to Zeland, creates real virtues, and no energy is wasted and no harmful excess potential is created. So he does excuse the idea of working on self-development in terms of importance. I had posted one of my podcasts on one of the reality transurfing groups on Facebook, and somebody mentioned, wow, your importance is really coming into fruition. And I don't know why, but I took it as both an insult and a brief glimpse of insight and truth, because she was right. And maybe I had made my podcast important or myself important with my podcast. When you look at Vadim Zeland, he is wearing sunglasses and doesn't really give you much of his own biography, as brief as he possibly can. You don't see him in a lot of videos and talking. I believe that he even states that he tries not to do that back in the days that Indians would take pictures, they believed it robbed their soul, and that when there's smoke, there's fire. I don't necessarily believe that, but that is how deeply he believes in the importance of even himself in expressing himself. My goal with this podcast is to educate as many people as is interested on this particular vibration, exploring the idea of multidimensionality and the power of our thoughts to change the world. So the idea is, as I researched reality transurfing, I wanted to understand how to become into this level of balance and to use these balancing forces to achieve my desires. So as Zeland says, to free yourself from the action of balanced forces, you have to stop buzzing like a fly against a pane of glass. And I believe that's a great metaphor. You can just step back instead of trying to get through that pane of glass, and you can see the opening of the window and fly right through it. So switch your intention from increasing your own sense of self-importance to developing qualities that you admire. And that is my goal, is to try to take what I see, qualities that I can admire, and understand myself better. But I do not want to make what my dreams are too important and my own self too important, because I understand the balancing forces that are involved in that. And for a long time, I didn't want to write or even create a podcast or do any YouTube videos, because I believed that it would generate a certain level of importance or excess potential. When balanced forces encounter self-importance, they knock it off its pedestal. In the case of inferiority complex, they force a person to raise their false, reduced sense of worth. So there's both sides. Balanced forces act direct and without concern for the subtleties of human relationships, Once they start having an impact, a person begins to act less naturally, highlighting the aspects of themselves they would prefer to hide all the more. Now, Zeland talks about desire, and the energy of pure intention is all that is required for you to transfer to a lifeline where the object of desire becomes a part of your reality. So simply the energy of pure attention is the key to overcoming excessive desire. Just knowing that you can do it. True faith, as the Bible says. It's that idea of true faith. So he talks about the idea of the subject of intention, but he's noting that pure intention is desire and action without the attribution of importance. So once again, here it is. That's the beautiful thing of understanding how to use your desires in the best possible way. And that is, pure intention is when you act on your intention, it is desire and action. Desire and action at the same time. Okay? Pure intention is desire and action without any of the excessiveness of importance, without the attribution of importance. Going to the shop to buy a newspaper is pure intention. It's not inhibited excessively, modestly, or self-depreciation. The reader already knows what this leads to. The amount of excess potentials is the same in both cases. The only difference is its positive or negative value. So there's two kinds of importance: the inner importance that you create with your own thoughts, and then outward importance. We create outer importance when we attribute huge meaning to an object or event taking place. I'm sure that we've all had a job that we badly wanted, a house that we really wanted to move into, some incredible concert that we had to go to, something in our lives that we really badly wanted. And when we put our energy into it, it moved us away from getting it. So when you attribute huge meaning to an object or event taking place in the external world, in this case, the formula goes, such and such means an awful lot to me. It is really important to me to do such and such. And consequently, excess potential is created and things go wrong, whereas the feeling of inner importance can be controlled. It is much harder to do so with outer importance. Outer importance is harder to control. Imagine that you have to walk along a plank lying on the ground. Nothing can be easier. Now imagine that you're forced to walk along the same plank which has been placed between the roofs of two high buildings. Walking the plank will have escalated the importance, and there will be nothing you can do to persuade yourself otherwise. The only way of eliminating outer importance is to have a safety net. The form of safety net will be subject and dependent on each situation. The most important thing is not to place everything on one side of the scales. There has to be some kind of counterbalance, protection, or alternative plan. Unbalanced emotions are usually manifestations of importance. So all unbalanced feelings, reactions, so if you ever feel indignation, dissatisfaction, irritation, restlessness, anxiety, despondence or embarrassment, despair, fear, remorse, attachment, admiration, exaggerated affection, idealization, worship, delight, disappointment, pride, conceit, contempt, disgust, resentment, all of those emotions are all manifestations of importance. And it's best for us to reduce these things in one way or another. So excess potentials only created when you attribute excess importance to an object or event that exists inside or outside of yourself. So projecting artificial importance stops you from fulfilling your desires. And that's a very interesting aspect. All the importance we attribute to things, be it inner or outer, simply are projection. No one is simply of true importance in this world. And that the richest are available to us. Children playing happily on the beach, splashing about, having fun in the waves, do not think about whether they are good or bad, whether the water is good or bad, or whether other children are good or bad. Whilst we all came into the world like the child of nature, if a person maintains a state of harmony, the best that life has to offer will be available to them. But as soon as a person begins to project importance, problems arise. People fail to see the causal link between their projections and the importance they experience. And so they buy into the idea that the world is a truly hostile place where it's really hard to get what you want. In fact, the only obstacle on the path to fulfilling your desires is the projection of artificial importance. I tell you what, I have had multiple things goals that I've wanted to achieve, things that I've really dreamt about that meant a lot to me. And when I was able to truly reduce the importance. Now, it's easy to talk about in theory, but to go into your body and really analyzing the memories, the components, and the feelings of importance, and to reduce the power of importance, it results in you achieving those things that you want to do. And this is very hard. If you really want something, how do you stop yourself from really wanting something? So try to follow a golden rule before you even start considering where the solution might lie. First, reduce the level of importance you associate with the problem. You'll find solutions to things if you don't make the problem too big of a deal. That way, balanced forces will not get in the way and the problem can be solved quickly and easily. So when you solve a problem, reduce the level of importance. And in order to reduce importance, first remember and be aware that the problem or situation has arisen as a consequence of projected excessive importance. It also allows you to wake up in your own film. Be aware of the control that you have over these environments. Control that your energy is. Until you can explain to yourself that every single problem is created by excessive importance, you will continue to bury yourself in its intensity, as in a dream, remaining completely under the power of a pendulum. Shake off the delusion, and recall what projected importance leads to. Then intentionally change your attitude to the situation in question. It is not difficult to do so. You already know that attributing excessive meaning to something will only get in the way. Chill. That's basically it. The main difficulty is to remember quickly enough that you're playing out projections of inner and outer importance. You need the help of your guardian, your inner witness, your higher self, who constantly keeps track of your inner values, and ask your higher self to balance these forces. Sometimes it's even if you do not believe in the higher self, simply asking, you will see changes. I've had people that I've taught and worked with that simply didn't believe, but I said, just say it anyway. And they've had changes in the way that they were to express importance. So if the event is genuinely important to you, and that's going to happen. We're going to have events, the birth of our kids, especially with kids. Somebody was talking to me about importance and they said, it's hard for me to divorce this idea because I have a child. And I agree. How can you take away the importance of your own kids? So if it's something important, try not to blow it out of proportion, because you can do it a favor. The best recipe for success, even if it's bad or good, is spontaneity, improvisation, common sense attitude. Any preparation should be by the way of creating a safety net, not by intensely serious or overly careful. This will only increase the level of importance you're attributing to the event. If you're worried about something and yet do nothing about it, this will magnify the level of importance that you give it. So take care of it. The excessive potential of importance dissipates with action. So by taking action, you can reduce your importance. Do not think, just act. The action is always the response to importance. Take action. If you cannot act, then it is better not to think at all. Shift your attention to something else. What you focus on is what you get. And if you start to become aware of that attention, just simply shift your focus. Do not boast about what you have, or balancing forces will work against you. Never under any circumstances boast about what you have, even if you deserve those things and you receive them fairly, to say nothing of the things you have not yet achieved, because balancing forces will act against you. I know that you agree with me when you think about this in your heart. You know that this is true. This is an incredible bit of wisdom. But how do we apply this to our lives? I know that you'll agree with me that the things you want to manifest are important to you. But what if that importance was the very reason why you don't have what you desire? Would you be willing to let go? I know you would. You see, when you make something important, you create an attachment to it. It's like you're sending out little cords that hook into the current reality, causing it to become stagnant, not allowing it to change or evolve so that the law of attraction can manifest your desires. For example, when you focus on past events and think you did this to me, you did this wrong, or even you did this right, you make the past event important. You become attached to it, allowing yourself to continue thinking about it and experiencing the emotions of that event. This only continues to create similar experiences for you. It doesn't allow the people around you to change, or your reality to change. And when I had these crazy events that in my past, where my life literally was on the brink and I survived, I've tried not to attribute too much importance to that. Even those wonderful times, which I'm incredibly grateful for, I cannot attribute too much importance. If you're looking to attract a relationship, but you're focused on events in past relationships, you may find yourself creating a cycle where you create the same relationship patterns with different people. So you may find yourself traveling, you may have yourself having trouble repairing relationships that you want to fix. And same goes for money, your weight, your career, everything in your life. Whatever you attach importance to is something that you're giving energy towards, but it's not the kind of energy you want to give. What you want to manifest is important to you, of course. You notice whether or not it is in your life. You go around seeing it that it isn't there, wondering when it will manifest, wondering what more you can do, wondering why the law of attraction isn't working. Why isn't this working? Brian, I've tried everything. I've done everything, and nothing is working. Usually the first response I have in those situations is the level of importance on whatever it is they're manifesting. All of these things drudge up feelings of resistance. So when you place importance, you get fear, you get worry, you get anger, you get sadness. How are you going to get angry over something that is not important? Or sad about something that's not important? Or fearful about something that's not important? Dropping into a lower vibration that blocks you from receiving your desire. You start noticing limiting beliefs and see all the reasons why you don't have your desire and why you can't have it. Importance gives you an excuse to do these things with your mind. But the basis of all this is importance you have placed on it manifesting your desire. You see where I'm going with this, right? When you let go of importance, you let go of all the blocks to manifesting your desire, allowing it to manifest rapidly and quickly. So how do you let go of importance? You can simply say it out loud. Let's start with the easiest solution. Oftentimes in these situations, you're not important to me anymore, and you let it go. The key is not to just let go of the importance of what you want to manifest. The key is in letting go of the importance of everything. Tell the relationship you want to create, you're not important to me anymore. Tell relationship issues you think you have, you're not important to me anymore. Tell any problems you have creating relationships, you're not important to me anymore. Tell every reason you want a relationship, you're not important to me anymore. Tell your desired partner, you're not important to me anymore. Tell money, you're not important to me anymore. Tell debt, you're not important to me anymore. Tell your bills, you're not important to me anymore. Tell your income, you're not important to me anymore. Tell the wealth you desire, you're not important to me anymore. Tell everything that comes up in regards to money and wealth, you're not important to me anymore. Release it and let it go. Tell your current body that you're not important anymore. Tell your current weight that you're not important anymore. Neville Goddard, one of the great writers, didn't visualize to try to change his physical reality. He visualized to create the feeling of having manifested his goal. And so after he would go into these deep visualizations, then he would go about his day. He understood that his job was to train his mind to focus on living from the state of the wish being fulfilled. His job wasn't to think about desire or about his current life. His job was to live from the feeling of already having manifested his desire. Chaos magicians believe that their magic works when they immediately forget whatever magic spell that they've given. And that the key for it to work is to immediately forget. And they have practices and exercises on how to force forgetfulness. When you're thinking about your desires or your current life, you create anxiety, doubt, and obsession. You focus on wanting something to happen and wonder how it's going to happen. These both imply that it hasn't happened. They also cause you to try to control the outcome and make things, the how, which is universe's job, not yours. The true vine and what creates your circumstances is your own wonderful human imagination. When you believe will no longer imagine as you formerly did, but will prune your thoughts every minute of the day, you will break the habit of feeling remorseful, depressed, or regretful. You will no longer think unkindly about another because you will know that he is actually yourself pushed out and appeared in your world because the Father in you called him, according to Neville Goddard. Pruning your thoughts occurs when you notice that you're thinking about something. You may be worried that something won't happen or fearing that the worst will happen. You may even be running past conversations through your head, wishing that you could have said or done something differently. When this happens, you want to prune your thoughts and intentionally shift your attention so that you feel, see, and think from the point of view of your desire having already manifested. Because if you have already manifested your desire, it would not be as important to you as it is. And the importance takes away the real power of the frequency that you're trying